Hello, founders. Welcome. Startups.com. We are live. We have a special show for you today. Every Tuesday, I have my main man, co-pilot, Will Schroter here. We're going to be reviewing some pitch decks, and we're going to be talking about how to help you work through your pitch deck. And we're going to go through a pitch deck that's been submitted to us. We appreciate all the participation and support. If you are with us here at Startups.com, part of the community, thank you so much. I appreciate all your support. Let me start off by saying this. We want to make sure that we answer any of your questions. If you have a specific problem or task that you're working on that you want me and Will and I to bat around and to wrestle around with, and you want to participate, just throw that into the chat or the Q&A box. We'll prioritize those. We have our lovely co-pilot as well. Jen, she's lurking in the background, making sure that we cover all the questions, and we make sure that we address everything that you need. And before I introduce Will, let's talk about Startups.com. This show is brought to you by us. If you have not checked out our podcast, we have an amazing one called Startup Therapy. It's the main reason. It is the reason that I'm here in this community, joined up because I was an avid listener. And when I got the invitation to join Startups.com and to hang out with Will and the gang, it's hosted by Will and Ryan. I signed up for it. It's a no BS look as to what it's like to be a founder. Will, tell us a little bit. Give us a little hint as to what to expect if they start listening to the Startups.com Startup Therapy podcast.
It is the no BS. I mean, it's just Ryan and I doing what we do, doing what you and I do, Ed, just sitting around bullshitting with founders all day. It's the best part of our job. We just get paid to talk shop all day, talk to founders. And really what we talk about is kind of what's in our head. And I always joke with people, like whenever you're watching this show, whenever you're watching Startup Therapy or listen to the podcast, it's really, we say it's what founders are dealing with. It's what we're dealing with on any given day, or it's what, conversation we just had with a founder the previous week, or in a lot of our founder friends, a lot of our friends that are listening to the show are like, wait, is that what we just talked about? And I never, reveal what I just talked to a specific founder about, but at a conceptual level, it's what we're talking about. And so you get to be a fly on the wall for thousands of conversations and listen of what happened, what we deal with on a daily basis. And more often than not, when I talk to founders and they listen to the show, they say, you're in my head. Yeah. This is exactly what I'm dealing with.
I hear that all the time.
Yeah. And what it is we're talking about the stuff that you deal with as a founder personally. It's less about just the business. It's about the business of being a founder. It's about the personal stuff you deal with. It's about the stuff you take home and you deal with at 3 a.m. when you're staring at the ceiling saying, what the hell did I get myself into? It's those thoughts going through your head and how to deal with them. And so that's a lot of what Startup Therapy is about how to deal with things on a day-to-day basis as a founder and what to do about it.
It is actually therapy. Just listening to it is therapeutic. I cannot express this even more. Talking about those topics that are sometimes taboo or people feel uncomfortable with. Like I said, highly recommend you check it out. Let's load up and get ready to get
at it.
Pitch decks, but we just want to say to all of you, if you have a question, if you're watching this pitch deck review and you want us to review your pitch decks, just send it to us at advisor@startups.com. Reach out to us. If you're on the socials, leave a comment. We'll let you know how to get that done. And then if you have a question during this talk, if you want to just abscond the entire show and talk about your pitch deck, we're ready to do that too. Like we will go wherever the trail leads us. We love improvising, being put on the spot. So make sure you use that.
Job.
Yeah, make sure you use the Q&A box or the chat. Will, let's just start off with this. Let's just load everything up, okay?
Yep.
What would you say is like the first thing, if I'm going to be looking at a pitch deck? You've seen hundreds of pitch decks. You're known as the pitch deck doctor. I'm a founder, and I'm getting ready to do my pitch deck. What's the first mindset? What frame of mind should I be in when I start my pitch deck? What would you say is the first step?
The first thing is understand that it's going to take 1,000 iterations to do a pitch deck. So I've been a founder for 31 years across 9 companies, and I'm a writer, and I teach pitch decks for a living. I teach, startups for a living. We've got 1.1 million startups on the Startups.com platform, 30,000 startups a month, meaning I just see a lot of this, right? Nothing special about what I do, but I see a lot of this. And I do this for a living, and it takes me 1,000 iterations to write a pitch deck. The reason I say that is because when folks are looking to build their pitch deck, we're all like, oh, it's 10 to 12 slides. It's like 2 to 3 sentences per slide. How hard could it be? I just need to get it done so I can go build a pitch deck and raise money. And that's the mistake we make. Right? It's the same way of thinking, well, a song's only 2 to 3 minutes. How long could it be? Or, how long could it possibly take to write Stairway to Heaven, right? It's not that easy, right? The guitar's got 6 strings. How hard could it be to master, right? That's not quite how it works, right? It's a little more complicated than that. It's taking everything that you've ever thought about this concept, this idea, in trying to distill it into like a couple sentences. That takes so much work. It's so much harder to say a lot in a tiny contained space.
But Will, I hear this all the time. Will, I'm a founder and I've got 3 months, 3 weeks, 3 days of runway. And I heard that founders get checks written to them like right off a paper napkin. I've heard all these stories. Why are you telling me, like, how long does this take? And what about all those stories?
Yeah. It doesn't work like that ever. Oh, now that said, I've actually had it happen to me, right? Like I've had a situation where me and a co-founder have raised money, millions of dollars in a couple of days, and it was a total fluke. And it's never happened to either of us prior to that or after that, right? We just happen to have been working on an idea that happened to found the right investors at the right time, and it was a fluke. Right. The guy that I'm talking about, it's funny if he listens to this, is named Jamie Siminoff. Jamie's the founder of Ring, the doorbell company. And Jamie and I had both started other companies prior to that, like 6 other companies prior to that separately. And it had happened to neither of us. But he and I had started a company together called Unsubscribe.com prior to him started Ring, prior to me starting Startups.com. And that company got funded in like 48 hours, like without even building a pitch deck. Yeah, it never happens, right? It's just weird series of events. And it never happened to either of us since then. Like, you hear those stories as if like that's a thing. It was a fluke.
Yeah, you think about the percentage of all the startups trying to raise money and the stories that you hear. It's so infinitesimal. It's crazy.
Yeah.
The other thing, Will, I caught a LinkedIn post the other day. I'm curious your thoughts because I was like, I need to ask Will about this.
Yeah.
And it was an investor. And he said, listen, your pitch deck is now one of the most important documents outside of your actual startup. And if you're not willing to put in the time and the effort and take care of the details on the pitch deck, I'm going to think that that's the same way that you're going to be with the rest of your startup. So do not skimp on your pitch deck. Spend the time, put in the work, embrace the pain of the pitch deck.
Yeah.
That was his warning. What do you think about that?
I think your pitch deck is your first product. And if you don't teach or create the pitch deck the way you create a product with the time and attention and detail, then you're missing it. And honestly, the people who treat the deck like a product and treat every slide, every bullet point with a Steve Jobs level of detail, you can see it. It's one for one. When I see the founders treat the vision, the detail with the same level of product vision and intensity, I see it. You see the same kind of product, and so do investors. It's your first iteration of a product, and you see that level of passion come through. What do you see?
I think of it the same way, like it's that first impression, it's the resume. You know, when I was working in HR, I'm a hiring manager. If someone crafted a really great introductory letter or paragraph, like researched me or made sure that it was relevant to the job I was looking for, man, did that ever go a long way? Like it just set them up for getting them through the door, at least getting the first step. So I think of it the same. I definitely think at the rate of competition and how many founders and how easy it is to start startups, how easy it is to skin an AI and create a wrapper around one and say, we're a startup now and all those things, that, yeah, a pitch deck could set you apart better than other founders in the same area.
Right. And I'm going to give a shout out to a friend of the community. He's on the chat right now. He's on the community right now listening. A guy named Hess from Chill. And I was reviewing his deck recently, and I pointed out how good the design is, right? And I said, listen, the decks don't get funded or not funded because of how good the design is, but it's a really good design. And I asked him who the designer was, and I said, kind of my compliments to the chef, right? I pay attention to that stuff. Someone was paying attention to the details.
Yep.
And you know who pays attention to the details? Really good entrepreneurs.
Yes.
Right? Really good founders. And again, I think those things carry through. So again, when you say like, who's paying attention to those things? Really good founders pay attention, not just to the design, but every aspect to the deck. They care about those things. It's your first product.
That is a great warm-up. Like I said, all of you who are joining us in the audience, if you have questions at any time, make sure you put it in the Q&A box or the chat. We're going to be monitoring it. If you're watching this on the socials all over the place, just put in those comments and we'll make sure that we try and get to them. We want to cover all the topic. All right, Will. So here's what happens. I have founders from all over the interwebs track me down and say, can you please review my pitch deck for me? And I say, absolutely. We want to help out. And if you're listening out there, we've got a little bit of a queue happening. I appreciate all your support. Before I could bang them out in like the same week. Now it's taking weeks to get to it, but we want to give it the attention. And we're getting guys like Will Schroter on who've done this over and over again to the success of founders. What an opportunity to get that done. So, Will, I got this pitch deck, and it was sent us to Kyle. And we briefly took a look at this and we thought, this is going to be a real good one to discuss.
Yep.
So we're going to dive into it. Remember, everybody watching, if you got questions, we can go back and forth. We can discuss your questions. But first off, it's going to be Gray Beam. And I always like to start off with the tagline right at the bottom. And I look at it, and to me, that's just kind of like the first salvo right there. So it says Gray Beam, automated data warehouse cost reduction. What do you think?
Yeah, I like it. It explains it. This is, it's kind of nature of it. A little dark, right? A little mysterious, right? Dark and mysterious can be good. This just feels dark, which is fine. But what's your take on it?
I think it's just straightforward. I can appreciate this. Obviously, it kind of reminds me. I don't know if you've seen that card game, Cards Against Humanity.
Yeah,
that's what it reminds me of, right? But I like the fact that we're just very straightforward, automated data warehouse cost reduction. Okay, so moving along.
Yep, moving along.
Here's the problem. 34,000 companies overspend $2.1 billion annually on cloud data warehouses because code optimization is manual and time-consuming data warehouse bill per second that code takes to run.
There's part of this I love, and part of it I think we got a challenge.
Okay.
Just one small pet peeve. First off, I'm going to say I like where these guys went. Right out of the gates, I'm going to give this a letter grade of a B, and I'll dig into why I'm going to give it a B. And a B is good. First pass, I'm going to say they did a lot of things right. That said, this is a small pet peeve. You don't need citations in a problem statement. This isn't a college term paper. Everyone's going to assume, unless there's something ludicrous about what you just said, that you're probably right. Your thoughts there?
I agree with you. Don't put in this full sort of citation thing or what have you. But sometimes I just see someone just put the source, like they say Reuters or Rutgers or whatever. And, that's fine. I'm agnostic to it, but I think it's overkill to put that whole citation down there.
Yeah, I think it's a distraction. Just generally speaking, again, I understand why people do it because they think in terms of like more academic papers.
Yeah.
What I generally say is, unless there is something that is unbelievable about what you said, you just don't need it. People generally just take your word for it and move on. Later on, if there's a diligence question where that's an unbelievable fact, we'll ask it. But for now, we'll just kind of move on. But there's a couple things kind of missing in the opener. 34,000 companies. What companies? U.S. companies, SMBs, Fortune, obviously not 500s, Fortune, whatever. I need to know what type of companies. So you left me a little inspecific as to what types of companies we're spending. Overspending $2.1 billion? Ed, that doesn't feel like a lot. What do you think?
Well, yeah, it doesn't feel like a lot because I don't understand what that overspending is. And this is where I would say kudos for putting the word 34,000 companies. Let's define the market a little more. Kudos for putting a number. They've clearly been listening to us because it's like how much this problem costs. But frankly, I don't understand what code optimization manual time consuming is. So
that
I don't
was
know
the second part I was going to get into. Yeah.
So I don't know if $2.1 billion is a lot compared to that. Is that in salaries? Like, I don't know. I have no idea.
Well, what I want to do is I want to chop this in half. I want to chop the challenge here that they've got in half. I love what they did with 34,000 companies. Again, I'd like to know what type of companies those are, or segment that a little bit. Are they U.S. companies? If that matters. What size of companies? Big, small, if that matters. Overspending $2 billion, to be honest, when we get an enterprise, corporate, et cetera, $2 billion is a drop in the bucket. That doesn't feel like that much, but okay. But I want to take overspend $2 billion annually on, by the way, whenever we said overspend $2 billion, whatever, I always assume it means annually, but that's okay. On cloud data warehouse, okay, let's segment that half. The second part, I think, is where we got thrown.
Yeah.
Because code optimization is manual and time consuming. This is what throws everybody. The guys who started this have already been to the team slide, so I know who it is. They know implicitly what code optimization has to do with cloud data warehouses.
Yes. Which we
no one else does. The rest of the world does not. And this is, and for the folks listening right now, remember, you know what your product does. You know those little details about why, in this case, code optimization has anything to do with why you'd be running up your cost at a data warehouse. No one else does. Or assume no one else does. You know what I mean?
Now, if I wanted to push this, all right, just learning. Now, I don't mind if a founder gives me a unique insight where I go, I didn't know this, right?
Sure.
But if somehow you communicated with me and I didn't get lost right out of the gate, you said something to the effect, did you know that data warehouses bill every second that there's an engineer trying to manually optimize your code, and that's a big waste? Then, okay, now that's something at least I can grasp onto without technical knowledge.
You bet. I love the did you know that. That's a really interesting way of putting it. And what we have to do is we have to set up the fact you're losing money specifically in a data warehouse every second based on the fact that your code, specifically the optimization of your code, is the factor.
Yes.
Now, what we're saying is because code optimization itself is manual and time consuming, there's some implicit funkiness going on there. In other words, that it's manual and time consuming. Ergo, if it was more automated, you'd be optimizing it more. And somehow that would translate into your bill going down. But it's not direct enough.
Yeah, I
We
would
kind of
say
made some jumps.
yes. And that's why I think your B grade is warranted. I think the raw materials, the pieces are there. It's just they didn't land it.
But again, and we can move on. But we jumped the shark a little bit here, right? Like in other words, we jumped and we said, hey, you should already understand how this business works, and therefore you should already know that code optimization is what it's all about. And you would only say that if you already knew how this business worked.
Yes, exactly. But let me just point out, and I want to give kudos to the founder here. I think I forgot already. Kevin? It's Kyle. Kyle, kudos. Yep. What I love is the simplicity. It's one sentence.
Yep.
Kind of a subheadline, but one clear sentence. They took a crack at it. It's not like a wall of text, or I don't have 6 bullet points underneath this that I have to read or lead me in multiple directions. That's what I like about this slide.
Yep. Loved it. Okay, let's go on to solution.
Gray Beam alleviates manual code optimization by using Gen AI to automatically rewrite code to run faster and cheaper.
What does that mean to you, Ed?
Gray Beam alleviates manual code optimization. It basically says there is an AI that's going to rewrite code for me, and therefore I'm going to spend less time doing stuff manually.
Okay. In the problem statement, we were saying, did we say that manual code optimization was the problem? We say that, go back to it. I know we talked about manual code. We said code optimization is manual and time consuming. Now let's jump back to the solution. We alleviate manual code optimization. We said that manual code optimization is time consuming. Okay, so did we say if we alleviated it, it's no longer time consuming? We're automatically rewriting code to run faster and cheaper. So it's not that we alleviated it. We did alleviate it, but we're trying to make it run faster and cheaper. The fact that it runs faster and cheaper is really what we're making it do. I understand we're alleviating the manual part about it, but what we're really doing is making it run faster and cheaper, and by way of that, reducing costs.
Yeah, let me take a stab at where my cognitive dissonance is coming from, because I think I'm sensing the friction that you're experiencing. If we go back to the problem solution, this is where problem solution have to align. We said right away that I'm overspending on data warehousing, and therefore I want to know that I'm reducing my data warehousing costs. And
that's exactly where I was just about to head. Yep.
And let me just pause for a second to founders, and Will, maybe you got comments on this. I see this happen all the time. What happens is founders come up with a solution that's like totally cool, and then they try and figure out what problem it solves and how to position it, et cetera. So if it's like the problem or your solution is something is manual, everything like that, I understand why you're reaching for this cost data, but you could have easily said, the problem is that everything's still manual and it costs a lot. And you have to get into data warehousing and say, now we made it automated and it does it for you, which is there. But if you're going to mention something in the problem, you better mention it in the solution. And that's what I'm missing. And that's why I was a little confused like you were, Will. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, let's go back to that solution for a second. It's too hard to make things cheaper. I'm spending $2 billion too much because it's too damn hard to make it cheaper. Gray Beam makes it super easy to make it cheap. Now that's basically what we're trying to say here. But what I want to say isn't just that we're automatically rewriting it, is that we make it cheaper. But we make it a lot cheaper, because later in the deck, because I've been through the deck, we save you a ton of money.
Yeah.
Right? We put saving money on autopilot, right? And that feels powerful, right?
Yes.
Saving money shouldn't be like an afterthought. Like we're saying we're automatically rewriting code, which is awesome. But the solution, what I'm paying for, is saving money.
Exactly.
Rewriting code is the conduit, but what I'm paying for is saving money. So I would say Gray Beam saves companies 30% of their bill by rewriting code.
Exactly.
Automatically.
Yep. You've created the order in which it makes sense cognitively for the investor. You say it's expensive, then your problem is it's expensive. Your solution is it's cheaper. Yep. And then explain the rest. That's what you need.
Okay, I dig it. Again, not far, but those tweaks fundamentally change the cadence in the response to this slide and how people remember the product.
Now, let me pause again and just give kudos to Kyle. You put one sentence in there and you went for the shot. And what Will is demonstrating is we all live in our language. And just the order words, slight tweaks and everything can make all the difference. But that doesn't mean you throw up on your slide and you put all the words possible. Kudos to Kyle. As in my mind, what I think about Kyle as a founder is notches above because he's willing to make concise statements, which tells me he's willing to be confident, which tells me he has what it takes. He has that X factor to raise money, stand in front of companies,
100%.
stand in front of clients and employees, etc. I think this is a really great start.
I agree. Also, I remember what he said. Okay, let's stick with that.
Yeah.
Had Kyle added 5 more bullet points, I'd have no goddamn clue what this product does, right? Think about that. Had he said more, I would understand less about what he does. The only reason I can comprehend what he does is because of how little he said. Think about that. Less is more.
And
all right, let's keep going.
I'm just going to say something for me, us as advisors, it actually makes it a lot easier for us to fix it as well when you are this succinct. All right.
This is too succinct. We just went the other direction.
Exactly.
The other direction.
I have no idea what this up and running in 3 steps. I don't know.
All right. A couple hygiene factors here. This is the how it works slide. I only know that because I spent time on here. The reason I don't know that is because this slide doesn't say how it works.
Yeah.
On every single slide in the top left corner, you have to say the name of the slide. In this case, how it works, problem, solution, market size, whatever the name of the slide, top left corner, it has to say the name of the slide. It's an indexing factor. But let's pretend it said it, right?
Okay, I'm going to fix it right away for this founder. And
write it with your mouse?
I'm literally going to go how it works here. Okay, here we go.
Amazing. All right. Perfect. Well done, Ed. Nailed it. Problem solved.
I love it.
Ed to the rescue every time. And a designer to boot. So the how it works here, Ed, we need to open up by reminding people what the problem the user had is in step 1. Yep. Right. So in this case, it would be some factor of user is trying to reduce their costs. User is stuck with this manual process. This is gnarly mess. That's step 1. Step 2 is service comes in and automatically automates all the code, streamlines all the code. Step 3 is customer's bill goes down by 30% because all this code is now streamlined. Yes. That's how it works.
Okay, but let's go to step 0. And I got other questions for you, Will. First, step 0, explain for the audience, because I think it's so simple how it works. This is how it works. But explain to us the purpose of a how it works slide, right from basic elementary.
Yeah. Okay, here's what it isn't. Here's the how it works isn't. It's not an instruction manual, right? Ed, here's what we get. And I understand because how it works is the words are deceiving. They're like, oh, well, you want an instruction manual, which I get, right? Here's what we get. And Ed, tell me if this sounds familiar. Step 1, go to our website. Step 2, create an account. Step 2, click on the dashboard. Step 3, and it's like, no, I mean, again, I get it. Everyone understands that you're supposed to create an account. Everyone understands that you're supposed to go to the website. That's not what we're asking for. What we're asking you for is, in the end, how does the user get done what they're trying to do, right? And it always follows this cadence. The first step is always, what were they trying to accomplish? The second step is, what did they do with your product to accomplish it? And the third step is always, in what was the outcome? So applying that, let's go back to that slide, if you would, Ed.
Here we go.
The first step was, what were they trying to do? Their data warehouse code was a mess, right? And it was costing them a ton of money, right? That was the first step. Step 2 is, how did they use your product? They applied our AI, it rewrote all their messy code to streamline it. Step 3 was, and then how did it improve their product? Well, it streamlined how it ran in the data warehouse, and it saved them a ton of money because everything ran faster because they were billed per minute.
Now, let me add, so great basic foundation. So let me get a little more detailed. Let me add a couple things that founders can look for. This is, I think it'd be a fun slide for customers, right? Right on the website. It's that simple. Connect, turn it on, save money type thing. Save 30%. Five minutes or more can save you 50% on your car insurance or whatever that kitschy tagline is, right? But that's not, the investor does not care. The investor doesn't need that hype. Also, the second thing, and this is what I'm seeing, just because we process a lot of AI decks. I've seen a lot of AI decks. Everything's got AI attached to it.
Yep.
If you're going to AI wash something, I need to see just a little bit, not the whole technical, don't give me the whole kitchen sink, but I need to know where the AI, is it attached to an LLM? Is it accessing something proprietary? Does it analyze? You need to give me something different, because here's what I see, Will, and maybe you got a response as well. I just see that, AI fixes it, or AI fixes it. And I'm like,
magic wand.
That's not enough right now.
Yeah. Well, okay. So let's talk about 2 layers of abstraction. Okay. The layer you get into in your pitch deck, which is, here is where the magic happens. Okay. So user applies our magic wand. I'm not going to stick with magic wand. Okay. Now at the pitch deck layer, you don't get a lot of explanation. I agree. You can't be too AI washed where you just say magic happens and then have no explanation, right? But you also can't get too detailed where you have this ridiculous Rube Goldberg style chart where you're trying to explain all of the schematics. Not the time for that. That second layer of abstraction, and Ed, you sat on the investor side for quite some time. That's where you're in diligence. That's where if somebody understands at a high level what it does, they'll say, hey, I'd like to pop open the hood and see what actually goes on under here.
Yeah.
That's a different discussion.
Let me tell you where this comes from. Well, it comes from my experience from blockchain white papers. Let's go back in time. So before, in the beginning,
a whole like, holy cow. Yeah.
But before, people used to be able to say, oh, and we're putting it on blockchain. And that was enough for investors.
God. Don't let those guys drag you down, Ed.
Until every founder and investors, we just got sick of it, where every founder, like someone would say, okay, we're building a new blockchain protocol. And believe me, 80% of my portfolio was blockchain for a while, right? And I believe that some of it worked out, a lot of it didn't work out. And if you're building a new protocol, we're putting this on blockchain, great. I was a fan. But then slowly, as the markets start to saturate, if someone just said, we're putting it on blockchain because we're putting it on blockchain, I was like, that's not enough. And therefore, founders had to separate themselves just a little bit more in those introductory decks and tell us exactly how they plan to go on blockchain without killing us with all the tech.
Oh my God, Ed. I mean, come on. That is a whole subculture unto itself, right?
But the pattern repeats itself, Will. And we're going to see this over and over and over again, right?
Yeah. Fair.
So, all right.
So what I'm saying, for the purposes of the deck, you can't go too deep, right? Because most people aren't going to take that extra step. For those that do, you welcome, that query. And you like, oh my God, you want to talk more about this? Let's nerd out and go deep. But you don't get to do it on this slide because most people are going to be like, yeah, okay, I assume it works. Let's move on.
And here's the next offending slide then. All right. We're followed up by this. Under the hood, like.
I have no idea what this means.
I had no idea what this means, right?
Well,
big problem.
Again, we don't have a title for the slide, so we have no context for what the slide means. Again, for just this reason, that's why we always have to have a slide. Oh, I'm sorry, a title. But if ever your slide cannot stand on its own, meaning if you have to be in front of the slide to present it in order for it to make sense, the slide doesn't work. 90% of the time when a slide exists, it's going to exist without you. We call it standing naked because you're always sending the slide ahead of you to be reviewed by somebody before you present it. And don't forget, most of the time, your deck is going to get passed on to the other partners at a firm without you presenting it. Even if you have presented it, the partners rather are going to pass it to the other partners. At that point, you're not going to be there. So all the slides have to stand up without you presenting it. Now, the way to do that is on every single slide. You've got to have a single summary sentence that says, hey, if you don't read this, if I'm not here, here's what I meant you to take away from this slide. The TLDR, if you will, of every single slide.
Yeah.
Got to have it.
Kyle, you did so good on the problem and the solution, but then we lost you. And so apply the same thing, get a nice bold headline with a few steps in it and everything. We know you can do it, Kyle. So we're just encouraging you to do the same thing, but you're on the right track. All right. So this is really the slide that should come after problem solution is the market. And well, I'm just going to be upfront. I like this slide.
Okay. What do you like about it?
I like the fact that one, top-down analysis, we start off with the whole TAM, $348 billion database services. That's how much everybody's spending. I get it. But what I appreciated was, this is my preference, and this is how we led our teams, is a thoughtful SAM and SOM in terms of figuring out here's where we could focus, and then here's what we realistically think we can make. And they showed the math in a real simple way that made me understand that you did do a bottom-up analysis, the number of companies, how much we think they're going to pay. Now, we could talk about, do we think this is battle-tested or not in terms of their assumptions, but that's a little later on. But to me, I was like, okay, this I can get behind, at least accepting this information. It didn't confuse me. And I said, all right, if you thought it through, we can move forward with this.
Do you feel like if everyone in the world stopped today and only paid for their services, only paid for Gray Beam's services, that they would make $348 billion?
340? No.
Then it's not a TAM. Let's talk about that, okay? Your total addressable market can't be for stuff you don't sell.
Yes.
Let's go. A lot of people hear that and they say, wait, huh? It can't be? Think about that. It's actually really simple math. And when I use that query, people like instantly go, well, shit, okay, that makes total sense.
Let me give an example to illustrate, and then you can address it.
Yeah,
we see this all the time. We see the sports industry is $3 trillion, or the travel industry is this amount, and that's my TAM. And that's illustrate what Will said. That is not your TAM because they're not spending all the money. That could be everything from buses to tickets to equipment to venues and all those things. So that's the reason it doesn't apply.
You bet. Your total addressable market is the amount of money that you can capture. Now, that's not the amount of money that you will capture. That is all the money being spent on stuff that you sell, right? Or stuff that money you could potentially capture. It's just that simple, right? It stops when it stops becoming money you could capture. It stops when it involves money for stuff you don't sell. When it stops when it becomes money for stuff you don't sell. So when you go back to that slide, I'm not going to belabor this point, but when I said, hey, does that 348 billion include stuff that Gray, I just blanked on it again. I got to put your name on every slide, by the way.
Graybeam.
Stuff that Graybeam doesn't sell. And you're like, yeah, it does. Then it's not part of your TAM.
Yes. Now, I think where I got confused, I thought this was $348 billion spent exactly precisely on, now you made me think it through, but if somehow this is the data that's $348 billion specifically spent on data warehousing for developers, then that would be a pass.
Correct. I agree.
Yeah.
Also, 1.2 billion on cloud data warehouses. There's no way that number is true.
Yeah.
I only say this, and by the way, I have no possible data point here. This is me just spitballing. Just I've been doing this for a very long time, and I've seen a million TAM Samsams on a million different markets. So I could be 100% wrong. But whenever I see anything at the enterprise level, these numbers always have a lot more zeros to them. And tell me if your mileage varies on this one. There's no way people are only spending 1.2 billion on cloud data warehouses. Now, I understand you said there's these 34,000 customers, and I think you're multiplying on a $36,000 ACV and probably get to that number, but something's got to be missing on the way you're calculating that.
And this is an easy fix, is just give us a little detail. Like Will teaches this all the time. It says, just explain it. We're going to focus in this geographic area. We're going to focus on this particular demographic or this set of behaviors and patterns. And that's what's going to get us our SAM. Yeah, here's our big market, but this is where we want to focus to give a picture to investors. So you just have to explain a little more. But like I said, I give this a B. I give it a B.
Yeah, no, it's the right structure. It's easy to get these numbers wrong, and everybody freaks out that they're going to get these numbers wrong. And by the way, most market size slides that we see are wrong.
Yeah.
In generally, when I say that, people are like, wait, what do you mean it's okay? The purpose of the market size slide isn't to be spot on. You're not goddamn Gartner Group, okay? Like your job isn't to be a market analyst. Your job is to be in a ballpark. Your job is to get to an order of magnitude. Is this a 1 billion, a 50 billion, a 500 billion type kind of problem? Okay, that's what we're looking for. We just need to be in a ballpark or an order of magnitude. Whether or not this is 7 billion or 11 billion doesn't make a lick of difference.
Let me throw in a little personal point when I was sitting on that side of the table. Even if your TAM SAM was wrong, if the founder exhibited the ability to at least be thoughtful and calculate it properly, then I was willing to work with that founder and say, hey, I like the idea and all this stuff, and clear is a big problem. I think we can fine tune it as long as you're in the ballpark. Just if we're playing baseball, I just need to be in a baseball stadium. Just tell me how many possible seats are in a baseball stadium, et cetera. We can fine tune it, but it really does show, instead of, and I'm just going to say it, lazy founders that go to Gartner and they just pull a report and they just cut and paste it and here's my market. And to me, that's just not a thoughtful founder.
I agree. And look, at the end of the day, no one actually does know. That's the funny thing. People are like, oh, well, there must be an actual number and everybody's set on it. That's not it. As an investor, I just need to know roughly how much money do we have to play with. The actual value is probably never going to get recognized if we're being honest, but I just need to generally understand what kind of money is on the table. We got a question. Can we get to it about market size?
I saw that. Let me read this out here. Okay. So thanks for sending this in. If a startup's market is all money spent on what you sell, but the startup is not selling or can't sell at this price, what is a TAM's value? Example, today's people spend $1,000 for X, but the startup sells at X at $100. The TAM is anchored to what price? The price of the startup people will pay, or for the startup's product or service?
Here's what I would say. The TAM involves how much money people have to spend on this product. Now, sometimes what we're looking at, it actually almost has nothing to do with what the startup's selling at, the price of the product is now. It's how much people are willing or have historically spent on this product. I'll give you an example. Let's go to Netflix way back in the day, okay? Like back when it was doing DVDs. And you were to say Netflix was charging $20 a month, okay? And maybe one day it's going to charge $50 a month. That value is going to change. And you're saying, what's the TAM for that? I would say the TAM for that has nothing to do with what Netflix it would be charging at the time or what it's going to charge. The TAM is how much are people spending on movies or rentals. So I would look at the TAM of movie rental, which would have been Blockbuster back in the day. I would look at how much people were spending for movies and entertainment at the time for similar purchase, which would have been AMC type, movies, etc., cable television, things like that. A lot of times you're looking for comparables where comparable dollars are being spent for comparable products and services. So again, it may not matter how much your startup's charging. It may matter how much people are paying globally for that category of service, so long as it's for that category of service. What we said a moment ago is if we're talking about stuff you don't even sell for stuff they wouldn't otherwise pay for that category of service, it's not relevant. Good example. Ed and I build a concert ticketing app, right? And we're like, our TAM is the whole music industry. No, it's not. We don't sell music. Like we don't sell albums. So that has nothing to do with our TAM. We can't say the whole music industry is our TAM. We don't sell most of the stuff in the music industry.
Okay, but let's keep going on that example. Now,
Yeah.
let's say, okay, and this for founders, remember, you're trying to demonstrate to the investor this market is big and it's viable. So Will and I created a concert ticket app, and we say in the world, I don't know, $10 billion is spent on concert tickets. Great. And we can, put that out there. Then we can also say, but here's our price, and here's where we're going to focus, and we're going to focus on Taylor Swift concerts. All right, boy bands, K-pop. I don't care, right? And say,
I love this market segment, Ed. This is amazing.
K-pop market segment. Will, he's a performer. Everyone, you might not have known this. You just got to ask. So the story, he's a dancer. Let me tell you,
I was a theater major.
Ask him that story one of these days, right? It's a hilarious story. I get a kick out of it every time. But let's just say we're going to focus there. And then, so our next segment, if all those people used our app and paid us what we were charging, this is how much money we make. And the investor looks at it and goes, $10 billion sold. And if we use this app, $500 million. That is not hard to conceive that you could penetrate that market. That's a great way to communicate to investors. So pick and choose what is going to tell the best story and convince the investor that you are a good risk to put their money into.
Fair. Yep. All right, let's keep going.
Let's do this. And please let us know, audience, everyone in the chat, if that didn't answer your question. Let us know if you got follow-up questions. Next, business model, monthly subscription bill to 40% cost reduced. To achieve 100 million ARR, we need to reduce $250 million of cost by reaching 27% of the current Snowflake market.
Okay, a couple things. We didn't do a good job of establishing that this was all about Snowflake. Or second, I have no idea what Snowflake is. Now, I kind of sort of do, but not really. And we're making a huge assumption that our audience knows what Snowflake is, which is dangerous. Second thing, what's a really neat thing to do here on a business model is show an example.
Yeah, exactly.
Here's what a company typically spends right now. And if they used our product, here's how much they would have spent with us. Here's how much they would have saved. And here's what we would have made. So you can show our economics, but a sample economic for what it would have meant to a customer would have been awesome.
Yeah, really, I understand because you're billing on 40% of the cost reduced. So, okay, so here's your main sentence.
Yep.
All right. And then to achieve 100 million ARR, like I don't need to know this, right? So if we got rid of this and we said scenario A, this is what they're spending, we save this, it goes to step B, and then the percentage equals, this is what they'd be paying, right? That would have been an easy one.
And I love this because whenever you're saving money, it's such an obvious sale point. Remember, your business model isn't just the business model that you're conveying to investors. You're also saying, and this is why people are buying. In my mind, the way to sell the business model slide is to sell it to customers. In other words, as an investor, when I look at the business model slide, I look at it as a customer. And if the business model slide makes sense to a customer, it makes sense to an investor.
But what I also like about this is it had just one clear sentence, and it wasn't so sparse. It's not like we charge a monthly subscription fee, okay?
Yep.
It actually explained it, and 40%, just to your point, 40% cost reduced, but that's where I was like, okay, how does that calculate in my mind? And that's where the example would have been absolute awesome.
Okay. I think that one was easy. Let's keep going.
Yep. Good job so far. All right. Yep. This looks like a roadmap / traction / here's where we are progress slide.
Doesn't have a title. This would have also benefited from a single summary sentence that says, this is what I want you to take away from it. Yep. I agree. It kind of feels like traction would have benefited from us telling you. I don't have enough of a feeling for what this slide was supposed to be to have a good enough response to what it should be.
Okay, let's say it is a traction slide. Let's just, for shits and giggles, make this an attraction slide. Then based on what you said, right, you put one big headline, right, the thing, which is kind of this. We've already had our first paying customer in 14 weeks. Let's say that was the big headline. And then it was just like quick bullets, like, get rid of this. Like, here are interviews, design partner, launch the MVP, 14 weeks later, first paying customer. Bang.
The traction slide needs to cover three things. It needs to tell me where is the product in its life cycle, right? Somewhere from idea to launch. okay, which you have, right? But you need to say, here's where the product is, right?
Yep.
Don't make me guess. Don't make me look around. It needs to tell me where are you in customer discovery or
Yep.
validation,
Yep.
right? Or have you sold something? And it needs
Yep.
to tell me where's growth at. Do you have customers? Do you have visitors? Do you have revenue? Where are you at with growth? Tell me those three things. That's it, in that order.
Yeah, in this case, Will, let's talk. Let me ask you on behalf of this founder, right?
Yeah.
Like one customer is great, especially if you're pre-seed early stages, paying customer. But growth, nothing stops you from getting 2 customers and then 6 customers and showing, because I see a lot of founders, they say, we have 300 customers. Okay, but I know that investors love it when they see like this happen and then, they can track it. And then you've got this kind of growth thing going where you share your week over week or month over month growth. I'll give you an example. Like Y Combinator, they stress this a ton. They say you got to be hitting 10% week over week growth for a period of 90 days, right? Then you're kind of ready and you're showing signs that almighty product market fit. So I would prefer it's like just spend a little bit of extra time. You got 1 customer, go and get 2 customers and then show that track record. And it will take you so much further when it comes to raising for this.
Agreed. All right.
Here's one that you really want to focus on. So let's talk about the competition slide.
I hate these slides. And everybody puts it. Now, again, I love you, Gray Beam. I love you guys, team. This is no personal indictment on you guys. Here's why I hate these slides. They don't tell me anything.
Yeah, this one doesn't.
Here's what the spirit of this slide is. The spirit of this slide is supposed to do this. And these slides have been around since the dawn of man, right? Here's what they're supposed to do. They're supposed to say, hey, investor, here's everybody that's in our space. Here's a bunch of logos for everybody that's there. Here are the axes, the X and Y that represent what matters in our space, usually costs, something like that. And we're always in the top right and everybody else sucks. Every single one of these charts looks exactly the same. They're always a quadrant. We're always in the top right. Everybody else is everywhere else. And guess what? No one in the history of history has ever understood why any of this makes sense. Right? Number one, because everyone is always placed in the same spot in every single chart. In other words, Ed, if you and I were placed in one of these charts, we'd both be 6'5" male models in every single one of these charts, right? Which is bizarre because we're 6'5" male models, right? Which is incredible, right? It's hilarious to me how meaningless these charts are, right? What I'm trying to say, here's why these charts are so useless. Number one, nowhere on this chart does it say, here's what our customers care about. Does it explicitly say, open up with the top line, to say, here is why when our customers are shopping for a product, this is what they care about the most. These specific features. Now it's implied, right, that they're trying to save some money, that they want things to be a bit more automated. But we're supposed to just kind of somehow look at this and assume that select.dev, somewhere on that chart by that axis, is somewhere over in less saved in manual. They must somehow, I guess, not do that. Now, if you're select.dev or Kibo, why do you exist in the market? If you're less saved and manual, why does that product exist? Why do they even have customers if they don't do those things? Do you see what I'm saying?
Absolutely. Let me illustrate for the founders here precisely what you're saying. Because at any point in time, you can rig this chart to totally say what you needed to say. And it's not really a competitive analysis. You're not saying we're thoughtful about our competition, we understand the risks, etc. So literally what's happening, let me pull out my trusty pen here. All right. What's happening is you basically said, this is good. So we are awesome and everybody else is bad, is really what happens. And to me, it doesn't help. Now, let me just argue for just a moment. Let me just pause. And I know Will, really went after the whole magic quadrant. Just for a moment. Magic quadrants exist for a really important reason, because when they're effective, they're really effective. The problem is they've been hammered to death and used so poorly that people have this revulsion towards magic quadrants.
They don't mean anything.
But I've seen magic quadrants and I've created magic quadrants that have gotten a lot of compliments from investors in stating, all right, if I've been thoughtful and I've said, this is how we are existing in a different space. We're not better than, but we exist in a different space in the way that customers care about, that they're looking for an alternative or we're filling a gap. I have gotten kudos on my magic quadrants. The problem is most founders don't know how to do a proper magic quadrant, or the other version, which is the features and benefits matrix that says, oh, look at all our check marks and everybody is a big fat, goose egg.
Yeah. Here's what I want you to do. I want you to say what our customers need most right now is they need a service that will specifically optimize their code so they can reduce costs. But when they try to use these 2 other competitors, they get no automation, and so they can't reduce their costs. So they're totally useless to them. That's the competition slide. That's what they need to know, right?
Yeah.
Look at it as a customer.
Totally.
right? Not an inventory of logos. That's useless. Just look at it and say, this is why customers are freaking out because they're trying to do this thing. And when they show up in the market and they try to do this thing, when they try to do it with our competitors suck. So they use us instead. That's the competitive slide. Tell that story. It's actually that simple.
This is a great clip for a competitor slide. We're going to make sure that gets put out there for everyone to learn. We are at the end of time. We have blasted through this. Like, this is probably the fastest feeling. Like, I think we've been like talking like 5 minutes. That's what it feels like. It's been a lot of fun. But
So much to cover.
let's blast through these questions real quick because I want to make sure the audience. So, how do you define the metric to show traction? Users, number of transactions, license fees. What's the metric that demonstrates proper growth? Will, what would you say?
Here's the thing. It's not just one metric. Here's what I would say. It's almost like a ranking. The best metric, of course, is revenue, right? That is the golden metric.
100%.
Have it yet. That's usually like what you get to last. Okay. So when we talk about growth, there's lots of different types of growth that you have leading toward revenue. In other words, you have people that signed up on your newsletter or social. That's early growth. You have number of people you surveyed. Can we go back to that slide? Because they mentioned that, and I loved that. They said 39, interviews with 39 heads of data. Awesome growth.
Yeah.
That's validation, right? And so it's anything that you've done that have showed that other people give a shit about your product, right? It doesn't have to be actual transactions because as an investor, I'm looking for third-party validation. Revenue is the final one that shows that there is some market validation for this product. Okay. Every point of validation, people following you on social, people signing up for your site, those are all growth metrics. Those are all traction metrics. Ed?
Let me add to this. Everything that Will said, plus avoid vanity metrics. It's not equal. So if someone says we had 300,000 downloads, that might work for some. But if you have massive churn numbers and it's a chat app and they download it but never sent anybody another message, well, then that's not a qualification. So make sure that you are thoughtful. What Will said, rank them on what demonstrates the most that people give a shit. In investor term, what has de-risked the investment? What metric shows de-risking the most and gives us confidence that you are getting to that almighty product market fit? So great question. Okay, so then the last one. Instead of a competitive chart, what can you do to demonstrate differentiation? Like showing you're not a copy or a commodity. So what alternatives, if there's anything? First of all, a competitive chart done right, and this is what we didn't get to. There are competitive charts that we've seen that are done right, but outside of that, what are some other ways, Will?
Look, even if you use that quadrant, right? Like we just showed, I'm not saying that the quadrant chart can't be used. I'm saying the quadrant chart without context, without a sentence above it that said, hey, don't just look at this quadrant chart and somehow guess why we're better. This is specifically why we are here. Always say this is why the customers are buying our product. The reason we're in the top right is because customers want specifically this. And we do this so much better than everyone else. And that's why everyone's buying our product. The point of the competition slide isn't to create an inventory of competitors. It's to say when customers go to make a decision, here's what's important to them. And they buy us versus everyone else because we have those criteria. That's it.
Yeah. Now, there's this whole term, are we a commodity? What exactly happened? And so we have to just expand it. If it's okay to say some customers in our segment want lowest price and some people are willing to pay more price because of these features. That's a fair analysis comparing the two, not saying these companies are bad because, they're a commodity. It's a proper competitive analysis. That's what we're getting to.
But actually, Ed, let me build on that. Let's say that we were a commodity, right? Or like, our product wasn't better, but it was cheaper. That's what we would say at the top. We would say for the customers we're going after, we're looking for a customer that isn't looking for a high furls product, that they are specifically a value customer that's going to buy our product specifically because it's the cheapest.
That's
right.
perfect.
But we have to provide that narrative.
That's the context. So set the investor up with context right away. And then your magic quadrant, your features benefits matrix makes so much more sense. It's a beautiful thing. So there you have it. Will, we could spend like 8 hours. We could have like an 8-hour show.
And we're going to.
Yeah, it's going to be.
Just not today.
Exactly. So everybody appreciate your contributions, your participation, great questions. We are here every Tuesday, so we'll continue. Bring your questions for the next one. Bring your decks, send it to us and say, hey, I don't mind if you guys, work on it. Obviously, we'll always give you one-on-one feedback. I do that all day, every day. Will has his office hours, and he has his pitch deck doctor, so make sure you check that out. Will, I'm going to leave the last word to you. What's your final encouragement to everybody who's come, participated, and people are going to be watching this?
Do this in many iterations. I know everybody just wants to do one shot, one kill, get this whole thing done. That's not the way this works. What I want you to do is I want you to take this slide by slide, right? And for those of you that have worked with us, this the first thing we'll do is we'll say, forget the rest of the deck. Give us one slide, isolate that. Focus on that slide. Let's revise that slide until we get it right, then move on to the next one. The worst way to do this, the worst way, is to try to do it all at once. It doesn't work. We start at the first slide, always with the problem slide, and we work backward from there. So when you guys get over to Startups.com, you get into one of our workshops or Slack chats, whatever, you burn through these videos on YouTube, whatever works for you, piece by piece. Don't try to boil the ocean. It works never. I do this for a living. I can't do it. One slide at a time.
That's it for us. Thanks, everybody, for joining. We're here every Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. We got some guests coming up, pitch decks every single week. Make sure you check us out at Startups.com. If you're here with us on the socials, do the social thing. Like, comment, subscribe. We love to hear your feedback. Will, as always, it's been a pleasure. I'll see you next week.
All right, my friend. Bye, everybody.